Fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Got Mr. Michael Hawley in the host chair today. How you doing?
That is correct. I'm doing very well. Bill's season's coming up, and then I don't know when we're gonna play the Giants, though. I'm not sure when that's gonna happen. Hi, James.
Hey there. I hope you get to play, you guys. I really do. We need some wins on our schedule.
In a lot of places, I'll tell you. I'm not just sitting there. Well, listen, so with us, we've got publisher and author. We've got Mr. James L. Hill. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Nice meeting you.
So what goes on with James Hill? Like, what brought you into this world? Is like, were you hurt as a child or something? Like, why would you want to write and publish? Like, it's a hard world. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and becoming a publisher is really a bad choice.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Yeah, being a writer is okay. It's fun writing and everything, but then when you decide, you know what, I want to publish, and I'm going to publish other people, and I'm going to find writers who haven't been heard from, and I'm going to put them out there, and then I hear complaints about how come I haven't sold a book yet, and how come I'm not a millionaire. I wrote a fantastic book. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? And it's like, I wrote fantastic books too, and I'm not a millionaire. So when I figure that out, I'll let you know. It's a love of pain, I guess.
You're not a millionaire? Jeez, Michael's been a millionaire a couple times over now.
Easy to lose the first million.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it's a slow go, and it's a lot of work, and I'll tell you. So now your particular books, I see. Okay, so your newest one, the latest one, is Ruby Cradle. Now that's a fantasy sci-fi sort of thing, right? So let's talk about that. So where did it come from, and what would people get when they pick up that book?
All right. So the Ruby Cradle is a fantasy. It goes through a mythology of mermaids, dragons, and humans that run the world. And it's a historical fantasy, so it's mixed into the actual timeline of life and of history. And so when you pick it up, it's the second book in the series. The first book is The Emerald Lady, which takes place in the golden age of pirates. And this is how the story starts. Shira, a mermaid, rescues Jeremy, a sailor, and they create this sort of like an accident, but not really. And her mom curses her. So that's how the story begins. And in order for the other mermaids to help out Jeremy and Shira, they go to the last living dragon, the last free dragon, I should say, and they ask the dragon for his help to find Shira and Jeremy. And in order to get his help, they release the rest of the dragons that the mermaids had captured over the centuries.
Wow.
And so that whole story goes on and everything. And now we come to the Ruby Cradle, which is now they got to go back and capture the dragons again, because the dragons are a pain in the ass. And they just cause war and destruction. And, you know, the queen was very angry that they released all these dragons back into the world after it took them so many centuries to capture them all. And the dragons are very mad with the mermaids because they did capture them. So we go back in time to the Age of Castles in the second book, and you learn the secrets of the dragons and how to capture them so that we can capture them again. Yes.
You had the background as the Crimean War for this?
Yeah, it starts off with the Crimean War, because after the golden age of piracy, the ages are what's important here, because we have the age of piracy, and then the Crimean War begins the modern age.
Okay.
And that's when we started using cannons on the battlefield. That's when we went from knighthoods to nations and things like that. At the beginning of right after the Crimean War, we started having nations rather than empires and kingdoms. That's how history falls into these things. So in the Ruby Cradle, we are now in what will be considered the beginning of the modern age. And we don't stay long in there because we kick back to the age of castles, the turn of the millennia. And that's when the dragons were at their most powerful and when the mermaids and the men teamed together to capture them.
Wow, okay.
So do you start out building your world? Do you create a world and then put characters into it and then have a situation? Or what's your particular way of writing something like this, a fantasy story?
Well, usually my way of writing is character driven. I usually think of characters first and their life and their situation. But in this case, because I was writing for Nano Write Mode when I did the Emerald Lady, and it was my first time doing Nano, and I decided I was going to write something I'd never written before because I worked on crime and I worked on sci-fi, but I hadn't written any fantasy yet. So I wanted to write it a whole new way of writing. So I came up with the concept of the world first, the idea of the pirates and mermaids. I'm an old pirate by nature. So I came up with the idea of pirates and mermaids. And so that idea of the world building was the beginning. And then I populated it with, okay, it's a love story. So, of course, mermaids don't fall in love with men. Men fall in love with mermaids. But in this case, Shira fell in love with Jeremy. And so that blossomed the whole idea of the story and the Gemstone series.
Right, right. Do you know, so when with your characters there, what's your process? Like, are you hearing your characters? Can you picture them? Do you see them? Do you, do you know who they are in that way, or is there some different process?
Oh, yes, they are very real. Oh, no, they are very real. These guys run around in my head all the time. I talk to them. They talk to me. We live in their world. They live in my world. Yeah, I'm pretty crazy.
Right. I was going to say, do they allow you to keep driving? Do you have a driver's license, or do you?
Yes, I do have a driver's license, and I try not to think too hard about things that are going on in other worlds while I'm driving. But I always say the car knows its way home, so I don't have to worry.
Yeah. You're not waking up with a shovel and boots by your bed or anything weird, I say. No, so that's interesting, but so do the characters actually throw the story off in a sense? Do they ever kind of take it off the tracks? Like you kind of have a plan or an idea as you're putting it together, and all of a sudden a character wants to go a different way?
Oh, yeah. People show up that would not plan to be there. They just pop into the story all of a sudden, and it's like, hey, how about me? I like to get in on this. And, and sometimes the story just starts off and goes to left field somewhere. And you're like, okay, how do I get out of this? How do I get back on track? And, you wind up riding yourself around and going through some circles and some hoops. And hopefully, you catch yourself before you get too far down the rabbit hole. One thing I do is research a lot. And a lot of the research I do never makes it into the book. It's good because it gives me background and everything, but the actual research that I have done, I don't actually put it in the book, but it flavors the book, and you can feel it when you read it. You can feel the story. I have people tell me, it was like I was there. It was like I was right there at that time. And I really got the feeling of being on the ship, And it's like, I researched the big ships, sail ships, all that kind of stuff before I wrote the Emerald Lady. Oh, wow, I was writing the Emerald. Sat out on my boat. I have a boat. So I'm sitting out on my boat, just bobbing in the water, because that way I get the feel of being in the ocean and everything. And these kind of things, they fire up the imagination, let's say.
My editor has no problem just ripping the crap out of me but you're the boss, you're the publisher. So is the editor nice to you? How does that work?
Yes, she is. And I do have an editor. She is nice to me. And yes, she does rip the crap out of me sometimes. And I argue with her and I tell her, no, no, no. And then it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay, sure.
At least you don't say you're fired.
No, I can't afford to fire her. I need her and she knows it.
How do you create dialogue then with your characters? Are you the type that acts it out and says it? Do you do all that in your head or a live thing, or how does dialogue come along?
Oh, I talk a lot. My father used to say I talk so much. He called me radio mouth, and he said, "You talk so much, you talk to yourself." And it'd be like, okay, but I'm not really talking to myself. I'm talking to these other people. And I have to remember where I'm at sometimes because, I'm at work or something and I'm talking dialogue back and forth between 2 or 3 different characters. And people are looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? So I got to remember sometime, oh, yeah, let's table this discussion until later when there are a bunch of people, walking around and I'm talking about murdering somebody or something.
Oh, boy. Now, do you argue with each other? That'd be really weird.
Oh, yeah. Be into arguments and all that kind of stuff. Because sometimes it's in my head, but then it starts to seep out. And because you're trying to write down, especially when I'm sitting down and actually typing it, then I'm speaking it out because then I want to hear what it would sound like. After I write it, if I go through and edit it, I'll read it out loud, say, well, that doesn't sound too good, or, I need a little bit more there. That sounds too tame. He wouldn't say that, he wouldn't say that. That's not him. And then, I have to rewrite a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you gotta do the process yourself. Things are leaking out of my head all the time. So that's a different story. So now, did you ever have, how do you say, is there some sort of subtext or meaning? Like when as the story's coming out and your characters are developing and it's moving along, is there something you hope the reader takes away from the story besides just the entertainment?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think every writer has, something they want to say to the world besides just the story. I think everybody wants you to feel what they feel about the story, either the theme or the motivation, or I want to move you to feel this way or to think that way, So yeah, in some stories it's more right up in your face, and in other stories it's like you kind of see it in the background of like, okay, this person was really evil, and what turned them evil? Oh, okay, well, I can understand that. This happened to this person. If it if that hadn't happened to, like, let's say Mojo from the Killer series, if his brother wasn't killed, if he might have been a completely different person. But he grew up in the South Bronx in a war zone. In the 70s, the South Bronx was a very rough place to live. We had gangs and all that kind of stuff. And so his brother gets killed in a gang, and he feels his gang did not actually avenge him properly. So Mojo took it upon himself to do that by killing both his gang and the gang that killed his brother. And so he becomes this bigger than life character that now everybody fears him, because after all, you got to be pretty bad to take out your own friends. So, and that puts him on the path that when him and Nikki get together, and Nikki's the son of a mobster, and Nikki's only goal in life is to become the head of the mafia. Because when you grow up in that idea of the crime families and stuff like that, you want to be that, and then you want to be the best at that. So, they get together and wreak havoc on the world, because if they weren't in that situation, they will be different people. But the situation they grew up in make them the people they are, and they live in a world where they see that the world is ruthless. And in order to survive in this world, you got to be ruthless.
So the Killer series, what's that all about? Talk about the Killer series.
The Killer series is about the mobs, the mafia and gangs in New York from the 70s to the 90s. And like I said, Morris Mojo Johnson, also known as Bulletproof, because he survives a shootout in a bulletproof limousine when they try to kill him, and when the mob tried to kill him. And the story starts off because he's friends with Nikki. His mom moves him out of the South Bronx to get him away from the gangs, because, like I said, his brother got killed in the gang. So to try to escape that life, she moves to the North Bronx, and he, of course, falls in with the mafia. His friends are in the mafia, and he falls in with them. And Nikki is up and coming, what we used to call the junior mafia, which is your brothers, your uncles, your father. They're in the mafia. You're too young to be in the mafia. You're only a teenager. You can't really join the mafia until you hit 18. They don't take kids because they don't have any leverage over them. So, but in the meantime, you're practicing. You're robbing people. You're pulling off, different things. You're selling stuff. So, falls in with his friend Nikki, who comes up with this bright idea to rob a mafia money drop, because he thinks the other guy is skimming money off of the other family. And so he figures it's fair game. I can rob them because they're robbing these other people, and I don't like them other people anyway. So they go ahead and they pull this robbery, and of course everybody knows it's them, and it causes a big war between the two families. And so that's the beginning of the story, and they go on to become bigger and better criminals, because that's what you do. When you're a doctor, you become a surgeon, that kind of thing.
So jumping from writing the Killer series to the Ruby Cradle, how was that for an adjustment for you? Like, what was the biggest challenge to change from one to another style?
Well, I do that often. I jump from one style to another. And one of the reasons why I do that is so that I can keep everything fresh. Like, I find if you write the same story over and over, it starts to read like the same story over and over. So if I just sat down and write crime story after crime story and try to put out the Killer series, I would think the plots and the action would become repetitive. So after I write one book, I'll clean my palette and write something else in a completely different genre. Like I'll write sci-fi, or in this case, I wrote fantasy. I also write sci-fi, but I started the fantasy series. So in between writing this book and writing that book and writing some other books, I clear my mind and I get into a whole new mindset when you write a different type. Fantasy is completely different from sci-fi. They're different from crime novels. I started writing a horror novel this year because I always wanted to write horror. Stephen King has been my inspiration and one of my favorite writers, along with Edgar Allan Poe. And so I always wanted to write horror, but I could never write a full horror novel. I could write a couple of short stories and things like that, but I didn't have the process of writing a full novel. And then I got picked for a children's charity, and one of the people that I know here picked me to write a short story for them, but they write horror stories for children. It's called Scares That Care or something like that. It's for children in the hospital, and they raise money by selling anthologies. I wrote an anthology, a horror anthology story, and then that kicked in my horror vein. So I was like, ooh, I got a great idea now that will make a beautiful horror story. And so I started writing a horror story, and in between here and there. So I'm always in between something.
Yeah, that's not done yet, right?
No. I just wrote the bare bones of it. I got the idea now. It's going to be vampires and witches and told in 1800 Germany, just before Germany becomes Germany.
You know, and the research does take a lot of work, like when you're trying to make it a real timing and getting and all that stuff. And it's true, you don't want to put it all in there because that's like an information dump, right?
Right. And the Napoleonic, it's just after the Napoleonic era, which is when they start. I like that era in history. In between nations and as these empires came and fought, at that point there was a lot of change, a lot of social upheaval, and it gives you a lot to write about all around the world. You know, there was a lot of things going on in the late 1900s and early 20th century. There was a lot of stuff going on, which led to like the world wars and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to look at that time period, you know, and see how people thought, what people thought about nature, nation, culture, all that kind of information. And we could see how we're heading back in that direction again.
What's interesting, I love writing in the Victorian area, and my fiction novels that I have. What I tried to do to keep it historically accurate was even look up the jokes they were saying, and I couldn't say any today because, I mean, the British were ruthless against the Irish. Every one of those jokes were just inappropriate now. So that was a tough part. Did you ever experience that kind of thing?
Oh yeah. If you read the Killer series, there's a lot of racial stuff going on in between. Because it's blacks, Italians, Spanish, especially if you know the Bronx. The Bronx is like New York is what they call the melting pot, but it's like we all melt in our own little circles.
Oh, right.
They don't try to mix the colors, you know, and things like that. So, but when you have some neighborhoods that are really well mixed, like I moved to the North Bronx and, you know, we had Spanish, we had blacks, we had Italian, we had Irish, we had German, we had Jewish, you know, so we see guys moved into the neighborhood one time and we were calling them Italian and found out they were Armenians.
Wow.
And it was like, where the hell is Armenia? You know, what is that? You know, and we kept calling them Italians and they were getting mad at us and, well, we're not Italian. And we're like, well, who the hell are you then? And they said, we're Armenians. Where the hell is Armenia? You know, where's that at? When you start writing the jokes and stuff and the things they say to each other, you know, some of that stuff would be very hard to tell. You can't go on stage and say something like that.
Right.
You can put it in writing and people can read it for themselves. But, you know, I wouldn't go up there and read that part of the book out loud. People would be like, really? That's what you think about them people? And I'm like, no, that's how they talk. That's how we talk to each other. That's what my friends used to say to me. And, you know, you learn the best curses and put down from people of that culture.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's how it is, you know?
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So listen, are you around on social media, website? Let's give out all the information where fans or readers can find or contact you.
Oh, yeah. I'm on Facebook, of course. Rock Hill Publishing is out there. JL Hill author is out there. If you want to find me, the best way to do it is to go to rockhillpublishing.com. That is my main avenue. But I'm also on Instagram and X, whatever, Twitter, whatever you want to call that now.
Whatever it is this week.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm posting stuff. I post stuff on Facebook mostly. And of course I put stuff on my websites. And of course I have newsletters. So if you go to my website, either JL Hill Books or Rock Hill Publishing, then you'll find a link there to sign up for the newsletter. And the newsletter comes out once a month for Rock Hill and once a month for JL Hill. And I post what I'm doing most recently and where you can find me. Like coming up now is going to be Killer Nashville. I do Killer Nashville every year. The two books, Killer with Black Blood and Killer with Ice Eyes, they were both up for awards 2 years ago. Yeah, something like that. I came in the finalist for the Falchion Award and for, what's the other one? I can't think of it now. Anyway, that's when I really wanted to win because it's a real nice trophy. It's a world with a dagger in it. And that's really nice. And one of these days I'm going to get me one of those. But I'll be there in August for the Killer Nashville stuff. And then I'm going to Belchicon in New Orleans. And been one of the places that I always wanted to go. Me and my brother were going to drive across country on our way to California. We're going to swing to New Orleans. We never made that drive. We wound up flying to California. But I'm probably going to get to go to New Orleans. And I'm going to be at the Belchicon up there.
Well, that'll be good. That'll be a lot of fun and stuff like that. So we'll have all that up on our website as well, so people can find you. And so, what do you got going on now? You're working on something now?
Yes, I have the third book and the final book of the Gemstone series called The Diamond Warrior. So you have the Emerald Lady, the Ruby Cradle, and then the Diamond Warrior, which will end the Gemstone series. And then I'm going to go do my horror story.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
I promised myself to finish the Gemstone series because it's been, about 10 years in the making. And yeah, so I just got out the Ruby Cradle this year. So I don't want to wait another 4 or 5 years to finish the series.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Stephen King, I'll have to look that guy up. I've never heard of him, so I guess.
Yeah, he's a little known guy, writer that, I stumbled upon, and he's all right. He's okay. I'm actually watching The Institute now on, I think it's on Netflix or MGM or something like that. He wrote The Institute, and I didn't pick up the book. I got so many books to read. I was like, ooh, I should buy that. And then it was like, you haven't read the last book he wrote. Then I see it's on TV now, and I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm going to watch that. It takes me back to Firestarter, this institute, because they're working on psychic abilities.
Right.
Okay. So it looked like the same type of story as Firestarter was. So
right. Drew Barrymore.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. And good luck with everything, and good luck at the Belchicon and Killer Nashville. Don't kill anyone when you're there, okay? So
I'll try not to.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, author James L. Hill, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks speaking with you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.